Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this edition of DH Sparks. Today, we are looking at the state of the residential real estate industry, how the pandemic has affected it, and how the situation will evolve here on. I am Rabottam, opinion editor with Deccan Herald, and I'll be moderating the session. I'm standing in for Vivek Kaul, who should be in the session because Vivek's apartment building has been hit by COVID-19, and he's having to deal with the Mumbai municipal authorities. So for the discussion today, we have some of the best known names in the industry. Our panelists are Mr. J.C. Sharma, Vice Chairman and MD, Soba Limited, Pavitra Shankar, Executive Director, Brigade Group, Aditya Virwani, Chief Operating Officer, Embassy Group, and Prashant Thakur, Director and Head of Research, Anara Property Consultants. Welcome to all of you. I deliberately kept the introductions brief because we have started a few minutes late, and my apologies to you and to the audience for that. If we can start off with the discussion itself, Prashant, I would like to call you in. Would you like to begin by laying out the scenario of the residential real estate industry for us as it exists today, thanks to the COVID pandemic?
Sure. Thanks, Raghutam, for having me on this webinar. Residential real estate, I think, is something which will never go out of flavor. Any kind of discussion, or for a country like India, which has a natural demand for housing. So let me take you, where this industry was pre-COVID. So I think for last couple of years or so, this industry was going through a lean phase because of back-to-back structural changes that happened. Though the changes were good for industry in long term, it caused kind of temporary disruption. And even if we talk about pre-COVID-19 in 2019, if you have to look at how this industry behaved, the launches were significantly down and sales also was under pressure. But we also need to take into account that a lot of structural changes have taken place, which has led the start of the corporate, the journey towards more organized sector for this industry. And, the unfortunate part for the real estate, especially for residential, is that 90% of this industry is dominated by local and unorganized players. Mm-hmm. Less than 10% is of,
the big guys like Mr. J.C. Sharma and Pavitra and Aditya, right?
Where there is an inherent demand for housing, but few of the wrong names have kind of derailed the growth. Ideally, when we talk about India, we are talking about 2 crores of housing deficit in urban India itself. If you look at the rapid urbanization rate, India needs housing. We are highly dense, and 80% of the country still needs to be built. So where we went wrong? So I think there was inherent demand, but the kind of product that was being pushed was more, focused towards investors, and that's where the end users were kind of pushed out of the market, and all they saw was by unorganized play, that the broken promises. What was promised was not delivered, and slowly it led to a situation where there was a huge trust deficit. Let me again remind you that we have that inherent demand still intact. We just need to provide the right product. Post COVID-19, I think the journey of consolidation, which would eventually lead to more formal and organized sector where bigger players, organized players will now take a prominent role, would definitely take this industry out of slump. And the reason I say is that we are set for a recovery. Now, if you look at the 7 years data, the price has remained stagnant. We are talking about home loan rate, which is at historical low. Post RERA and other structural reforms, I think this sector is moving towards a more cleaner environment. And though the industry has slowed down, prominent players are gaining market share, and this market is now end user driven. And I think that's where slowly the buyers will start to come back. The only missing piece right now because of this COVID-19 is that consumer confidence is all-time low because of
Right.
it's no secret job losses, and the GDP numbers were quite shocking.
Mm-hmm.
But I think once the economy starts to revive, residential would be the first one to come back. And the reason I say that, not because the next set of journey will be led by more organized and cleaner players, and that's where the consumers will start to come back. So I think this is the background of the residential real estate, which where we are sitting at. We are kind of at the cusp of a major reform, and I think I will repeat myself again that this is an end user driven market, and we are just looking at a much more cleaner and organized industry in coming future.
Prashant, you sound very optimistic right now, but does the rest of the country also think so? Let's do a poll right away with the audience, and let's see what they think. We have a very simple question, getting to the bottom line as such. So the question is, are you looking at investing in property this year in the midst of the COVID pandemic? For our audience on this question can be answered by Zoom and those on Zoom, but for those on Facebook and YouTube, the question is, would you like to invest in property this year? Are you prepared to invest in property this year? And the options are, might consider it, no, I'll wait and watch, and I'm unsure. So think about it. I'll bring up the answer in a couple of minutes. Prashant, you want to carry on?
Yeah, so I think this question should be slightly modified. As I said earlier, that this is not an investor market, but anybody looking to buy a house for his end use and who has been kind of saving a certain amount of corpus for this purpose, I think he should not wait. People are sitting on the fence in the hope of further price correction. I think interest rate, if you look at, it's at historical low level. Prices have not gone up. There are a lot of ready to move in inventory in the market. I think the question should be, if you're an end user, will you buy a property this year? I think then the answer would have been different. But I would again repeat myself. This market is for end users, and for an investor, he has to kind of get into a property, right location, but he will have to wait. So you'll have to give time to it. So I think this, I would conclude my thoughts on where we are as industry. Yes, I'm quite hopeful. The journey is kind of still kind of panning out. It will be a bit bumpy ride,
right?
And the key is how soon the economy revives.
Right. Mr. Sharma, if I could come to you, could you tell us what exactly have been the effects of the pandemic on your industry? We know that the construction workers had all gone away to their villages. We know that unsold inventory has been piling up. We know that a lot of money is stuck in projects which are not being done at this point of time. Could you explain to us what your key concerns are as of today and going ahead? I think you need to unmute yourself.
Yeah. Good afternoon once again. I think Prashant has already set the tone. The pandemic per se, as you correctly put it across, might have impacted as far as the construction activity getting slowed down is concerned. Because yes, no sooner the lockdown was lifted, workers started going back to their villages. But the good news is that they are coming back faster than what you and me had anticipated. And today, from a strength of about 25% or so, now at most of the sites what we are operating, the strength has gone up to 65-70%. It is a pleasant surprise. The other thing what we need to understand very clearly, that pandemic per se had not impacted the demand of the real estate residential space especially at all. Rather, it had allowed the would-be buyers to think more calmly and with the interest cost falling, to take an informed decision. From our perspective, we have seen that from June onwards, things are getting normalized better than what even we have anticipated or the way the market anticipates.
Right.
We also feel that this is the time where the people who did not lose their jobs, right, for them, right, it becomes a godsend opportunity. They have saved significantly more. They were looking to buy a home and now they have got an opportunity with some kind of a quote unquote good deal as well as a good interest rates. For those who have lost the jobs, sort of, probably they will take little bit longer time to come back to the market. So the quality of the inquiry and the conversion has become much better. At the same time, this pandemic has also allowed developers to look back and understand their own strengths as well as the weaknesses. So far, we have been talking about that because of the demonetization, because of the RERA, because of this liquidity crisis, or because of the GST, the business got disrupted and we have been impacted as victims kind of a thing. Now we got an opportunity to understand our own strength, our product strength, our people's strength, our process strength, and we have got more than enough time to figure out a solution as well. So net, I feel that the demand has remained intact. In our case, and some of the other cases, you will be positively surprised with the kind of sales what we are doing. At the same time, this has also allowed those people who would be staying put in this game to ensure that when the things get normalized from point of view, when the customer is free to come out and visit his office or our sites without any fear. Once that kind of a normalization process sets in, I do believe that there will be a significant uptick in the demand better than what we had experienced before this COVID breakout.
Right. Could you give us a sense of some figures like, unsold inventory at this point of time, maybe just in the Bangalore market, or if you can reel out the all India figures, that will also be great.
I think it's a good question. See, I talk about my own projects where we carry an unsold inventory of about 257 crore as on 30th of June against the total approved projects inventory of 11,000 crore. Which is about 2% only. So I am not unduly worried about. When we talk about this inventory, somewhere you live in Bangalore, you must have seen certain projects stuck even before the COVID for multiple reasons. And those projects I don't think are going to get revived very soon. But when Prashant kind of people, when they do that kind of a stock taking, they will include that project also into the unsold inventory and create some kind of that fear that there is a huge unsold inventory. As a buyer, if you look at, you go around, you will find handful of developers today, they are working at sites and their projects are available. I rather foresee with few launches, correct, and very few developers today continuing with the construction activities, rather there may be a supply constraint in next 2 to 3 quarters.
Right. We'll come to that supply constraint. I'll before I move on to Pavitra and Aditya, let's bring up the results of the poll first. So there's 40% of people saying we might consider investing in property this year. The 46% saying no, I'll wait and watch, and there's 14% saying they're unsure at this point of time. So I guess some of your optimism is valid at this point of time, which is great news for both the buyer and your industry. Pavitra, would you carry on from where Mr. J. Sharma left us in terms of what's happening in the industry? What do you see from the Brigade Empire's point of view?
Hi, good evening, everyone, and thanks for having me here. I would definitely echo almost everything of what Mr. Sharma has to say, and he put it really well, summarizing what is happening today. So I'm trying to think what else I can add there. A lot of the numbers that he's mentioned.
Tell us about what happened when the construction industry workers moved back, and there was worry that they wouldn't come back. What did you guys in the industry do so that you could give them a level of comfort and ensure that they would come back? What did they tell you, and what was your reaction to this whole episode?
Well, definitely there was a lot of uncertainty for sure. It's such a once in a lifetime kind of event that happened here, and exacerbated not just by the fear of having the pandemic, but also just the impact of having that kind of a severe lockdown. I think there was a lot of fear as a result. And, as soon as you curb someone's freedom to move around, that is definitely going to be at a very high level. So naturally, even though it made a lot of sense for construction workers to stay put, stay where there was work, all of us developers were keen to continue work as soon as possible. And in some cases, they were allowing on-site construction at various stages of the lockdown. So despite all of that, even though it was, fairly rational to sort of stay, there is a job, there's income, many of them wanted to just leave. So at one point in time, it came down to as low as 20 to 30% of the worker strength at site, despite all the various measures we had taken. And I know the whole community had sort of pitched in towards that. So in terms of, free meals, free food, and making sure they were engaged, physically active, a lot of counseling, all of those things, while that was still happening, naturally the interest is to go back to your family and see how they're doing. So as Mr. Sharma also said, I think we were all expecting full strength to be back around Diwali time, or that was what many of us were sort of expecting. And we are also worker strength at around 70%. I think wherever possible, we've tried to enable them to come back. In some situations, we've not done it very widely, but there are others in the industry who've even, sprung for flight tickets to get the skills back. So I think it is really dependent on the contractor, the subcontractor, whether they're able to get the workers back and how badly you need them at site to finish. Most of us will still be on track for projects, but for some that were very close to finishing or the radar date is soon, definitely there is a lot of pressure to have the work completed. But that said, there is no impact on supply chain. We are not seeing any impact on that front. And except for like some blip in the beginning on the cement prices and all of that, generally things are back on track. So construction is back in full swing, I would say. On the demand side as well, we are seeing our inquiries come back to about 80% of what was there pre-COVID times. I underscore that the quality of the inquiry is very good. The time taken to close a booking is much less nowadays than before. While people still have the same number of options, I think there is definitely a flight to quality. They want to go with someone who has been in the business for a long time. And even though there may be some kind of premium with going with a more established player, I think most people would rather, pay for that today and have that peace of mind. So this is what we are seeing in terms of inquiries. And of course, everyone, is keen. Maybe it's a Bangalore thing, but everyone is keen to do digital bookings, digital experience, the whole sales experience, everything is online today. So we're trying to enable that as much as possible. And two other trends that I would probably add on is that we're all looking at the cost side of things. Typically, we would be looking at top line and revenue and all of that. But I think we all woke up to the fact that we really need to be extremely conscious about the cost angle. And we've also seen what improvements you can do on your marketing investment or whatever it is over the last few months. And there could be some pretty serious shifts in how we all address the cost impact. The other thing I would say is people always say that millennials are not going to buy, but we're not seeing that trend at all. In fact, millennials will buy. It's just a matter of people reaching that age of your low 30s to mid 30s, when you do want to, have a more stable setup for yourself, whether you're going to start a family or whatever it might be, it's just a natural progression in life.
Right.
So we're not super worried about this whole move to rental or, shared amenities or shared spaces, despite all of the discussion that was happening before. I'm sure there is still a market for that, but I think we can all be confident that residential real estate, especially for sale, is definitely still here, and we're all still in the game on that front.
Right. Aditya, what's your experience? You probably operate more in the so-called luxury sector, right? Are these gradations of affordable, mid-segment, and luxury still relevant? And are you seeing demand in all three segments, or are you seeing demand in only one or two of those?
So thanks, Raghutam, for having me. Hello to everyone on the panelists and obviously the audience. It's an honor to be on this. To your question, right now we've done a merger that's kind of diversified us with various different price points, various different assets across the country. Yes, we predominantly have been in the luxury sector, and we've seen a lot of fruits from there. We're actually seeing now in a post-COVID world, a lot of traction from the residential, luxury residential side of it. A lot of people coming in, doing site visits. I think they spend a lot of time at home, got frustrated at how small their house is, or we should actually be investing in houses for the future. So we actually think that luxury is actually going to take a big upswing at some point next year. And residential does go through cycles. What we've seen in the past is a lot of finance going into various different developers. We've also seen mismanagement, and all the top developers are guilty of that. We've seen delays in projects. We've seen delays in handovers. And we feel that when a project actually has financial closure and you actually deliver to the time committed, you will see traction and you will see sales, whether it's luxury or whether it's mid-segment, whatever it might be. I think people are tired of getting that capital tied up and locked with developers. And so with the luxury segment, our portfolio is a lot on the last mile, OC received, near completion, either end of this year or might spill over 2 months of next year. So we feel the luxury segment sees a lot of traction when you have completed products. No one wants to spend 5, 6, 7, 8 crores and then get the money stuck. So we're very bullish actually on luxury. We've done a merger with India Bulls, which gives us a foothold into Mumbai, which is a great market for luxury. And while we will continue to focus on luxury, we also now have a great mid-segment product. Embassy Springs, which is in the north of Bangalore, just the month of August, we saw 30 crores worth of sales. And we've also now ventured into Mumbai with more mid-segment stuff, which we're very excited about. And we feel that, again, once you have closure, which we do, it's naturally that people are going to come to you and buy. So we actually think that the residential sector is in a really good place, but just want to emphasize that last mile residential will see a lot of demand. I think new launches, new construction.
What do you mean by last mile residential?
So what I mean by last mile is near completion. OC received, pretty much under 6 months to hand over. And we feel that's the key in the residential market is, finishing the product and then selling it. So a lot more equity going into the projects. I think bank financing is going to be trickier. I think there's going to be even more consolidation to the stronger players. And I think that's going to reflect with the decisions of the home buyers who are going to come to the, the top developers who can actually finish these projects on time. And then, once you do that, I think you're going to reap the rewards.
Right. I'll just raise the second poll question, and then I'll come back to you guys for a further question and answer session. What is the biggest stumbling block in investing in real estate right now? Uncertain economic atmosphere, job instability, high housing prices. Let's see what our audience thinks of what you're saying, right? Prashant, would you like to weigh in and give a sort of reality check on reality at this point of time?
So I think all of
in terms of inventory, in terms of projects being launched, are you seeing a lot of new projects being launched?
First of all, I echo the thought that all the panelists have said, that the industry, in fact, from last couple of months have kind of controlled the new launches, which is good for the industry, and everybody's focusing on execution. That's what buyer is expecting. So we might see some good launches in this coming festive season. But I think the good part is that most of the developers are now focusing on finishing off those projects which are nearing completion. Because because of this reverse migration, these projects were kind of stuck for a certain amount of time because of lockdown. And we are in a situation where consumer is kind of really hoping that he gets the delivery, and that's what everybody is trying to do. So while the launches are happening, but they are more of a focused launch. But I think the good part is that completion has taken the center stage. And government, for example, to be precise, in Maharashtra, they have reduced the stamp duty, which I think is a positive move. Because what was happening, if you look at all the government intervention that happened in terms of policy, it was more to unclog the supply side. Nothing significant was being done to boost the demand. So I think reducing the stamp duty, Maharashtra government has done that. I hope that other governments would follow, state governments would follow that. This was the first major intervention to boost the demand side. So I guess with festive season coming in and a lot of pent-up demand, and I do agree that people have been locked down in their house. This gave them time to kind of think through. And then, if you look at the need for housing, it has kind of evolved more. It serves multiple purpose. You kind of, you're working from home, your kids are doing their schooling from home. So the dimension of home has evolved, and that's where people are looking at more flexible kind of home, bigger space, the focus on quality is more. And then, I think, as I said earlier, that the only missing piece is how soon the economy revives. Apart from that, there is a certain population, for example, let's say, who are kind of looking for early retirement, those, IT guys, or let's say NRIs who are kind of now coming back. The first thing that they would like to secure is a roof over the head. And I think this time is quite ideal.
Right. Okay, let me throw this question open to all of you. As you said, the only question that remains is, when will the economy come back to its own, right? So when do you expect the economy to revive to an extent that people will feel comfortable with making purchases? Could we start with Mr. Sharma?
See, as far as the revival of the economy is concerned, what I personally feel that right now the investment cycle is broken. A. Number two, the banks per se, they are going through with huge stress. They had to give a moratorium from March onwards, which had continued till 31st of August. And they're not sure, because the case is pending before the Honorable Supreme Court, how are they going to recover the back interest along with the installments which had already fallen due. Forget about what is going to fall due from now onwards. So there is a challenge. On the other hand, if you look at all the decision makers today, whether you are a politician, whether you are a bureaucrat, whether you belong to a media, whether you are an economist, all of them today, they agree that without reviving the housing sector, Indian economy cannot be revived. I am making an emphatic statement that today, for the banking industries to survive, the overall home mortgage percentage in their total advances needs to go up from the present 10% or so. If the wealth has to be created among us, the Indians, they need to migrate from their agricultural land or gold to owning a home which had become a primary asset. For the 100+ major industries and 200 plus small industries, real estate sector will act as a pivotal for them to survive. For the people who do not get jobs, when you talked about beautifully about the construction workers, who are these construction workers? They all are the people coming from the villages where the dependence on that agricultural income is not enough, despite Narega, despite Janadhan, despite direct benefit scheme. They are unemployable otherwise. You are giving them the jobs, sort of a thing. So you have to see that this gets addressed. India is blessed that the IT sector has been protected even during this COVID pandemic, right? And India is blessed that while we can be a poor country on a per capita basis, we are food surplus, and we are one of the most mercantile genius traders community. And we are also an IT capital of the world, which is available today at the lowest possible cost, be it real estate or be it the IT engineers. So, and this COVID, with all the reforms which had already taken place, I foresee if you have a horizon medium to long term, India to get back to 10% GDP growth, real estate sector to start growing at 15% or so. The people who will be surviving, they have to be bankable, where the customers, the banks, the vendors must place their trust on them. And the demand side, if you compare ourselves with China, I believe that we have a long way to go with the equivalent population, and China being the manufacturing hub of the world, and we being the back-end capital of the world, sort of a thing. So there is no need to be pessimistic. At the same time, we Indians, when we become overtly optimistic, this COVID kind of a thing, or a high debt on our balance sheet, or less focus on the processes, all such things we need to do away with. And like Pavitra was telling, we have to digitize, we have to modernize, we have to become process driven. And with these kind of youngsters today, Aditya, Pavitra and others, I do believe that the Indian real estate sector has got a bright future. And this sector will be leading the revival of our economy in other way.
Right. Pavitra, you want to add to that in terms of, when you expect, after the latest GDP figures, are you as optimistic as Mr. Sharma seems to be?
Well, I think the GDP figures came out right where everyone was thinking. We were all sort of expecting like a negative 25% GDP.
Okay.
Lack of right over the last quarter. But if you're looking forward, I mean, obviously you're coming off a very low base. I think there will be definitely some growth. I'm not going to be able to predict when it's going to come back, but there are a lot of indicators. Like I think real estate also tends to look a little bit at the auto sector, and the auto sector is expecting like a pretty decent recovery. They're expecting to be 100% in terms of manufacturing capacity, and I think it will take some lead from there as well. And in terms of on the ground, we do see like the inquiries are back to 80% of pre-COVID times. And as some of the other panelists had also mentioned, the quality of the inquiries is high. So I think in terms of optimism for people to make their real estate purchase, a lot of it comes down to the individual circumstances. Naturally, the kind of industry that someone is employed in, do they worry about job stability? What kind of position or role are they in? Is it amenable to a work from home kind of atmosphere? And I think for us, having such a large proportion of our portfolio, these are things that actually don't worry us as much. The IT sector has been fairly unscathed in terms of the whole pandemic compared to other industries. So I think we're not really pessimistic about it, but at the same time, it's sort of like you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. We really need to see what policies will be put into place, despite a lot of measures taken by the government and, economic packages announced. I don't really see a lot of it affecting at the ground level. So I think we really have to see how individual circumstances do work out. And for, again, only underscore that in Bangalore, because we have such a high percentage of salaried professionals, people in the IT or ITS sectors, it's still been quite stable in that sense. We had a very tough Q1, but after that, things have really been looking up and definitely faster than we had also projected for ourselves.
So where have you found the demand coming from? Has it been coming from the salaried professional, or has it been coming from business persons?
Definitely more on the salaried professional side. Even prior to COVID, most of our demand was coming from this sector itself, again, by nature of us being in Bangalore, and then also from our product portfolio itself. More than 80%, 80 to 85% of our portfolio is mid-segment and affordable. There's not much that is in the luxury or high-end sector. So we've actually seen good demand coming in from end users, which again means the size of the units is a little larger. We've actually seen a 15 to 20% increase in the average size of the unit or the area of the apartments being booked. We've also seen a lot of interest from NRIs, not just in terms of inquiries, but also them actually closing the transactions. So we've seen a big jump actually for our own portfolio. Now about 25% of it is coming in from NRIs, mainly in the Gulf and the US. So that has actually been a very positive sign, and NRIs capacity is also higher. So there is definitely an improvement in our average realization also. So I think
you're smiling.
Sorry? So because of those trends, we are feeling quite positive about this.
Aditya, you are smiling. What made you smile? What were you thinking?
I'm always smiling.
That's good.
There are things I agree, there are things I don't agree. In fact, just to give you a pretty interesting stat, our luxury portfolio is actually seeing more traction now than before COVID. So it's we actually are quite bullish on luxury, and looking forward to the stuff that we have in Mumbai as well. But to your question on the economy, my answer, it's a very tricky question, I think. But my answer to that is it is going to be a slow recovery for the economy as a whole, and India as well. I think we are in a far better position than many other countries. What I do think also is that the real estate sector, and specifically the residential sector, we're in a funny point right now where we're peaking cases every day. We're going up. I think we're seeing so many people coming and flirting and seeing our properties, and I'm sure this is happening with the other developers as well, but no big decisions being taken yet. And I think when you actually look at the environment, it's pretty obvious why that's happening. No one knows where this can go. Luckily, there is light at the end of the tunnel, but realistically, it looks like it's going to be, second half of next year where we have a vaccine and things are fully back to normal. You're still going to have a linger period after that. So what I'm trying to say is that the residential sector is seeing people, and it's quite interesting because it reflected in the poll you did as well, is that you're seeing people, they want to buy houses, they're just watching what's happening with the environment. And once that gets better, we are extremely confident that will reflect on the demand and transactions happening. So I honestly, it's hard to say because it's so uncertain, the environment, but if I had to predict, I would predict more towards the end of the year, December, maybe even Jan, Feb, March, is where you'll see this upswing on not just luxury, but residential as a whole. So if you have people on the verge, like a lot of traction going on, a lot of inquiries, people want residential, and back to Prashant's point that it is an end user market. So people do want it and realize that they need these houses, and this situation can happen again. So our view at MSC
So let's bring up the second. Let's bring up the second poll results. and then we'll see whether our audience thinks on pretty much the same lines. No, this is the first poll that we have on screen. Could we have the second poll? Right. So 44% of our audience thinks that it's the uncertain economic atmosphere that's preventing them from moving ahead on a real estate decision. And 31% say job instability, and 25% say high housing prices. The last one probably is because of you guys. So we will come to a question on that probably later in the program. Prashant, you also brought up the fact that the festive season is coming up, and so there's an expectation that demand will pick up at that point of time. But this has been the expectation of the industry for over the last 5 years, that things will pick up during the Diwali season. It hasn't actually happened. So are you expecting that it will happen this time? Especially even after all these schemes that the government has come up with, low interest rates, and then CLS-linked, subventions and all that stuff, demand actually hasn't picked up as much as the industry expected it to.
We need to understand that unless you don't acknowledge that a problem exists, I don't think there can be a solution to it. The good part is that the entire ecosystem has now realized that what the problem is. So there was a huge deficit in the minds of buyer. The aspiration of buying a home has kind of gone way quite high during this pandemic. But that fear whether I'll get the possession or not, if I buy an early stage construction project, with whether the developer will be able to complete it or not, still in the mind of the buyers. Okay,
Prashant, I'll just interrupt 1 second for because some of the questions, Q&A questions that we have got is on these lines, right? Whether the developer will deliver on time, whether people will have issues with the quality of delivery, the non-provision of utilities and stuff like that. Would all 3 industry representatives like to take that question and probably tell our audience that what you think about it?
So maybe allow me to complete this, and then I think it would have some answer to what your audience have asked.
Sure.
So as I mentioned that there are certain doubts, but having said that, they are willing to stick with developers who have the history of execution. So while you see that the whole industry would kind of go down, the share of renowned developers, developers who have delivered what they promised would go up. So we did a survey recently, and it was not very surprising. People were willing to pay premium for a renowned developer.
Okay.
I think we need to look at the situation from this angle. So I'll repeat myself. While the industry might shrink for a certain period of time, the share of developers would increase, and that's good for industry. That's a clear indication that people are willing, and they're sending a very strong signal that it's time that we put our act together, focus on delivery, focus on quality. The market is there. There's no denying that India, as I said, is a housing deficit country. We need to just deliver right product at right price point of time, and in a right way. The customer engagement has to happen.
Right. As I said, some of the questions that we have gotten from the audience is mostly about these issues of delivery, responsiveness of the builders and things like that. I don't want to bring up the names of any particular companies, but would all 3 industry representatives like to take that question, probably give some assurance to the audience on what you think you can deliver at this point of time. We can start with Mr. Sharma.
See, we can assure you without an iota of a doubt that the developers currently who are offering their projects and products, they are well funded, well capitalized, and they will be in a position to deliver their products to the customers within the time frame they have committed. There are issues pertaining to that labor part, which we have already addressed. That yes, there was a brief slowdown. Workers have started coming back, but the authorities are given to that extent an extension of time. And the developers also today are a bit accommodative vis-a-vis, right, the payment plans and other things. So I get a sense that with the current challenges, no developer is going to venture out, take bookings from the customers, knowing fully well that he does not have the wherewithal to complete the projects. There may be some black sheep here and there who are continuing with the sales.
There are, Mr. Sharma. There are some black sheep. It's not among the top 5 builders as such, but there are plenty of black sheep downstream. So that's why audience asks these questions.
But the customers, they do know about them, and they are not that aggressively selling their products. Their products are not visible per se. And still, if blindly somebody is doing in this digital world, what can we say? Because they all are white-collared, intelligent, capable people who have succeeded in their life. So my view remains that the developers have become far more transparent, far more accountable, better capitalized than they were. If they are not launching the projects, because they are clear that they have to be more responsible vis-a-vis their existing customers and the existing projects. And customers need not worry about not getting their products from these developers.
Right. Pavitra, do you want to take on that as well?
Yeah. I had mentioned this earlier as well, that there was an impact due to construction workers not being available in the first part of this financial year. A lot of those issues are still getting resolved. While we may be at 70%, we do still need 100%, capacity at the site for the project to continue as planned. That is the direction in which we're going. Most of us are, on projects where the delivery is 2 to 3 plus years away. I don't think there should be any issue in terms of catching up. In fact, after RERA coming into the picture, many of us have also become a lot more conservative or realistic about the timelines that it actually takes to, go from planning and launching a project to when you can completely deliver it with all of the amenities. And I think most established players are very attuned to that. And none of us want to do anything that would damage our reputation, clearly, because this is, we've been in the...
Are you having internet?
Not that I'm aware of. It looks fine to me. I can hear you. I don't know if others cannot. Yeah, can I continue?
Right. Some parts of your speech are not coming through. Yeah, sure.
Okay. Yeah, so that's on the delivery of projects that have already been launched. Some of them that were supposed to complete by the end of this year. In those cases, if we do have challenges, we're doing everything that we can to make sure that they do get delivered on time. If not, some of those will have, we will have to take the RERA extension given by the government, which is the 6-month extension. But naturally, these projects were all on track prior to COVID. So it's a matter of catching up from what happened during the lockdown and challenges. I would also echo that in terms of new launches, we are only looking at launches where we are comfortable with the demand side of the picture. So we have done launches in larger projects where we're launching subsequent phases, and that has also seen good traction. We do have a launch coming up in Hyderabad, and the Hyderabad residential market is doing well and is very positive towards new residential launches. So we're looking forward to that one. But I would say even in Chennai, some of the recently launched projects in Q4 of last year have done extremely well, surprising even us over the last quarter. So there are some definite good points to what is going on, but I would say we are certainly taking things cautiously and making sure that we are aware of the demand side of the picture before you embark on anything. Because once you start the project, we don't want to stall it or stop it in between. So we have to be completely comfortable with launching.
Which are the markets in Karnataka, from your point of view, that are doing well? Is Bangalore doing well? Are you guys going more to Mysore these days, or which are the places that are doing well?
So we've actually been in Mysore for the better part of the last 2.5 decades. Mysore is a smaller market. It's a tier 2 city, and personally, I don't see a lot of growth options in tier 2 cities. We've been a big part of the Mysore residential market. But sometimes it is tough to see, and I don't think it really has the depth and breadth to absorb a lot of supply. And for Brigade, once we have reached a certain stage, we need to take certain size projects. So I still think Bangalore is the major market in Karnataka. And in fact, our outlook is only looking at tier 1 cities, and we're focused on Bangalore, Chennai, and Hyderabad.
Right. Aditya, do you have a perspective on this?
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Pavitra that RERA has brought a lot of discipline and benefit for the end buyer. So that's good. That's something that we support, and so do all the big developers. I honestly think that the whole delay part, the whole overstock and delays in the various projects that have been happening in the last 5 years is because of the banks. It's because of the bullish finance market that has lent to so many different developers, created so much supply, so much stock. And I think going forward now, I'd encourage the home buyers or potential home buyers to actually do their research on the companies and look at their balance sheet and then make the decision. Because the last thing you want to do is get stuck in a project. I think, going forward, RERA, all these various different things has changed the game, changed the way people do residential. We will not launch a new project unless we have full financial closure and are extremely disciplined with our finances and deliver project to the timelines. Because whatever you say, when you deliver the project, it sells. The guys who deliver quality, you do sell, and you get the price that you ask for. So I actually.
So you're basically saying we won't give any discounts, we won't cut the price at this point of time. Is that it?
I don't think. I think the prices that all the developers on this panelists have offered is extremely good. I think all our product speaks for itself, and if people are waiting for prices to come down, at least speak for Embassy, it's not going to happen. We actually want to take prices up because we know once that product is finished, we can actually demand what we want. And we're extremely confident of that. But again, just emphasizing the fact that, the companies need to have financial closure, need to be delivering on time. And you see that with the developers who do that, you actually churn out stuff much quicker and on to the next. So I think that's the new way forward for residential. And you're going to see massive consolidation. You're going to see the top developers see the fruits hugely, and you're going to see the for disciplined developers go away slowly.
Right. I have an audience question that I want to bring up. This is a hyperlocal sort of question. Any of you can take this, or all of you can take this. The question is, what location within Bangalore city is coming out as the most promising in the future?
I'll let us go in order again.
Sorry?
I'll allow Mr. Sharma to...
Right, sure. So Sharma, from your perspective, what location in Bangalore is the most promising? Going ahead.
See, Bangalore, if you really look at, it has got huge advantage of growing from all sides. Right. You have Bellary Road in the north, developing very fast, thanks to the airport, thanks to the investment on the infrastructure. You have got the eastern part of Bangalore where the Whitefield got developed about 20 years back, right? You have got Sarjapur, Wipro, and in the south, Electronic City, thanks to inventories and other giants, which had ensured that it is fully developed from the north side, from the eastern side, as well as from the southern side. And the western part of Bangalore, if you really look at that, is the old Bangalore, which goes towards Mysore, was already developed sort of a thing. So a developed Bangalore from the western side and growth coming from the north, east and the south side sort of a thing ensures that it grows from all sides. At the same time, if you really look at the offices, generally speaking, where hundreds of thousands of people are working, more than 100 million square feet of office space has been absorbed in last 2 decades. It is primarily on the southeastern side of the Bangalore. Right. These are the guys who had migrated from the other cities to the Bangalore, and they will be needing the home more acutely than the other guys, sort of a thing. So the southeastern corridor, which starts, you can say, that from the Silk Board side and up to the Hebbal Junction, is the growth corridor of probably the world. And the all other parts here and there, you will see great demand. This is the best market from a single city point of view for last 10-15 years, both on the office space as well as on the residential space. And still, I would use the word that best is yet to come as far as the residential space is concerned. So this is how we should look at the Bangalore market.
Right. Pavitra, where are you seeing the demand coming from in Bangalore? What do you think is the best location? You have a lot of projects in south of Bangalore as well.
Yeah, I mean, we have projects across the city in all directions, actually. But I think it's no surprise, like Eastern Bangalore, Southeastern Bangalore, these have been where sales generally tend to move the fastest. We see it in our own portfolio. But also that is where you tend to see prices being on the higher side. So affordability, I think in North Bangalore is a lot better. Recently, we were talking to other consultants in the industry, and they were also noting that in North Bangalore, there happens to be some kind of shift over there. Maybe people are realizing, hey, some of us in the IT sector can still work from home. So why not just be away from the office environment itself and go somewhere where it's more affordable? And I think overall, I think the metro is a great equalizer. As the metro comes in, I feel and hope that the entire city will sort of migrate more towards like a transit-oriented development. Because once you have that kind of connectivity, and maybe you're just one, you get on and you get off, right where you need to work, that can be a huge game changer. So over the next few years, that will actually start to become a lot more of a trend rather than the areas themselves. But what we have also seen for us, the biggest movers tend to be in the eastern, southeastern, and then now on the North Bangalore side as well. But I think in the end, a lot of it just depends on, are you hitting that particular sector of the market with the right product and the right price? And for that matter, if you can do that and you somehow manage to have that figured out, it doesn't matter which part of the market you're in, you're going to see a very good traction in sales.
If I were to go out in the market and look for some place, the first question I would ask is, is there water in this area or not? Right.
But then I don't know which part of Bangalore you'd be okay with.
Yeah. Right. Right. Anyway, I want to come to a question that I'm sure you guys are thinking about, as well as the buyer. Mr. Sharma, I will start with you. What policy intervention should happen at this point of time so that you jumpstart the real estate industry again?
It's a very valid question. The real estate sector to get jump started,
particularly in terms of demand.
Of course, yes. What we are expecting from the government primarily is the following: we are absorbing the GST in our construction cost, and on top of this, we are levying GST also, along with the stamp duty and the registration charges. Somewhere the GST got introduced with the clear message that the end user should be paying the GST, and it has to be a pass-through mechanism. So what we believe is this, that the government must ensure that about 18% or so of the GST, what we are currently absorbing with our construction cost, it should be allowed as a pass-through to bring down the cost, where the affordability part also becomes better, number one. Number two, the liquidity part, the developers have been paying higher interest cost. And other way of looking into, under construction homes, a buyer pays 7% or less interest. But on an average, a developer is paying today about 10% interest if he's lucky to have got money from the banks. If he has got money from the NBFCs, the cost is about 13 to 15% bare minimum sort of a thing. So the government must create some kind of a funding options beautifully to see that the developers also get funded below 10% minimum. All the developers who are going to offer their products, so that again the affordability improves. Number three, from a buyer's perspective, they need to get some incentives. So from that perspective, the income tax benefit should not be restricted to 200,000, 250,000 by way of interest or by way of the principal amount, and that to only one home. Whatever may be the value of the home, whether they are buying a luxury products or whether they are buying a mid-range or an affordable, depending upon their income capabilities, after the taxed income they are investing in the real estate, they should be permitted to the extent whatever EMI they are paying, completely set off against their salaried income. If these three things the government does it properly, overall its revenue will not be lost because volumes will go up, delinquency or the bankruptcy will come down significantly, the cost of the product will come down, and this may drive the demand for the homes so beautifully where land is not at all in short supply. We can go vertically and fulfill the requirement of the housing on the one side, and at the same time reviving the economy and making every home buyer a reasonably secured and wealthy person in due course. Right.
Aditya, you want to take on that?
Yeah, I think there can a lot can be done in terms of the entire planning and approval process. When a developer looks at starting a new project, we're obviously looking at how long it's going to take us and how much of your capital gets tied up in that particular development. So the thing is, like, there are a lot of different regulations and approvals and authorities and all of that. And I know the community has gone on for ages saying it would be good to have a single window clearance, or that seems like a very tough ask, but at least some kind of greater transparency and some kind of more reasonable kind of rules, which can be enforced more strictly. But at the same time, everyone is happy to do compliance when there is absolute clarity on what the rules are. So a lot of times, because of this and because it takes so long to get clearances, sometimes it will take 8 to 12 months to get a project off the ground. And it takes another 24 to 36 months for construction. And all this is time that a buyer, if they've bought at the time of pre-launch or whatever, they're busy paying pre-EMI on these things. And that also impacts the affordability. So for a developer to maybe give a better value proposition to the end customer, and in general, I would say real estate is a great value proposition. The average rate at which things sell in Bangalore is like in 5,000, 5,500 price range, which is fantastic for the level of quality that you get. Where construction costs, as Mr. Sharma also said, now without the ITC, without the input tax credit, it's it's very high. It's maybe at least 60% of the entire price that you're able to transact at. So having all of these factors removed from it will allow developers to have a much more efficient production process, and thereby maybe be able to charge more appealing prices to the customer as well. There is too much of a transaction tax loaded into the entire transaction. Right.
Aditya, you want to pursue that?
Yeah, what Sharmaji said.
What policy interventions would you want from the government?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Sharmaji is a veteran in the business, and everything he said, I couldn't agree anymore. 2 points that he highlighted were the GST and the funding. Although repo rates are going down, it's not reflecting into the CF loan. I think the government has to push banks to actually lend more, cheaper, be more stricter and more selective with who they're funding. I think funding rates should definitely come down. I also think that the government should help with restructuring loans, especially now. I think that will have a direct impact on demand, because once you actually churn out these ready stocks, you will see demand and you will see a boost in the economy. So I think restructuring is something that everyone is pushing the government for. They have done it, but just for the affordable side, I think it needs to reflect on the mid segment and up segment as well. And another thing I would add is the rental housing. We're really bullish on rental housing and co-living, but not necessarily co-living, just rental housing as a whole. I think yields are really low in India. If you look at the REITs globally, or at least in America, none of the REITs are all multi-family residential REITs. So if we can actually come to a similar kind of product here, where either by changing or combination of changing design and getting incentives from the government, because the new generation don't want to buy properties, they don't want to lock up capital, including me. You're going to see a lot of rental demand, and if that can actually make sense on a financial model, I think that can be a really cool and interesting product to bring in a lot of foreign investment into the country. And actually, now everyone's chasing office and industrial just because the yields are better. But there can be a huge foreign injection if rental housing works. And to do that, one, you got to change the design. You got to work with smaller units, design it more efficiently, design it more livable. I think we, including Embassy, built too big and have spoiled people with living extremely large apartments that you don't need. When you actually shrink it down and actually do the rental model, the yields actually make decent sense. And with the help of the government, I think you can only improve those yields to make it more institutional grade, investor grade. So, I want to just, I agree completely with Sharmaji with whatever he said. Completely, we need to push the government for that. I'd just like to add that, restructuring and rental housing is something that should be looked at. I know rental housing has been looked at from the affordable side, but it should be looked at from the mid-segment side as well.
Right. I'll just throw one last poll question at the audience, which is basically asking them the same question that I asked you. What will convince you to invest in property? Are you expecting a drop in prices? Will lower interest rates on loans help you make a decision on buying? Or do you want complimentary offers like free parking, or any of the people are now offering iPads for buying a house? What is it that the audience wants, right?
I would wonder if you could add an option like lower stamp duty, because that is something nobody wants to pay. No stamp.
That's right. You guys have already thought of that, and you have the ability to get the government to do that. Great.
I would have done it by now.
Yes, we will also put some pressure on the authorities.
I think that is possible as a poll option, because complimentary offers of parking, iPhone, all that is great, but it's like a small thing. It's really a sweetener of the deal, right? But if you really want to encourage on the demand side, I think the stamp duty is a huge thing. It is a very big factor, and there's a lot of inbuilt taxation in the entire process itself that ends up becoming.
Right. Okay, so I have one last question, and hopefully that will be the most interesting question of the session. But before that, could I ask Mr. Jaisima in the audience to go ahead and ask his question? Mr. Jaisima?
Yeah. Hi, everybody. Yeah.
Hi, Mr. Jaisima, go ahead, please.
Yeah. My question was, I am a senior citizen, and I don't see any of these major builders who are present here, or the others who are already there from a long time, coming up with any senior living options for people who are retired, because we 60s, today's 60s is yesterday's 40s, and the new 60 is the 80. Especially to some extent, yes, Brigade has some models or products for senior living, like Parkside and other things, but I hardly see much of any focus or anything towards senior citizens, senior living, especially now with nuclear families where there is hardly 1 or 2 children who are not with the aged parents, also with the aged in the sense who are above 60. And I hardly see anything, especially in South Bangalore, for senior living. And Brigade also has only in West or in North or in East and other things. I mean, I was just wondering if is it because of lack of demand, or there is still, it is not evolved basically, because the population, I mean, demographic population of the seniors is going up in India as such. So why there hasn't been much thought which has been given? Maybe there would be some reason, obviously.
Right. Pavitra, Mr. Sharma, do you want to take the question?
Let Pavitra speak on this.
Yeah, Mr. Jaisimha, thank you for the question. As you mentioned, Brigade does have the Parkside line of senior living that we call for independent seniors. I think it is, there's definitely a market for this. The question is, are we reaching it the right way? Even though demographically there is definitely a story for senior living, somehow for the projects that we have launched, while they have got some kind of traction, I would say that the general buying pattern itself is different from your regular approach, right? So most of the senior living purchases happen once the project is completed. I think prior to that, a lot of customers don't necessarily want to think about it, or maybe they're a lot more risk averse, so maybe they want to wait and see until the product is actually there. For our first Parkside project, which was in Brigade Orchards near Devanahalli Airport, we actually saw a decent pace of sales during the entire construction cycle. But once it was done, and even today after it's been sold out, we constantly get requests saying, can we also, can you see if there are any units there? I think one is that, like, you have to sort of finance the entire construction of the project, not with sales, but on your own with bank funding or whatever, which is a very different business model than what most of us follow. That's one thing. The other thing is, operationally, it is quite tough. I mean, it's not just senior living home. There is the entire aspect to care for the elders who are there, making sure that they get the right medical care. It is almost half an operational service department / hospitality / medical care that you're trying to give. So I think it's a challenge for many of us to ensure that not only are you giving the real estate space, but also the right kind of quality and care to the residents who are there, because the name is always associated with the project, and we certainly don't want to develop something and then have someone else come and manage it where we are not aware of what kind of standards are being kept up. So I think those two are the main challenges. I completely agree that demographically there is a huge story to senior living, the same way as Aditya was talking about rental housing as well. I think demographically there's a huge story for that as well. But because of all these other factors, your cost of construction and the cost of development, and not so much the cost of construction, but the cost of financing that entire project, somehow these things do not come to pass. But we don't have anything in South Bangalore, but we do have in the other 3 parts. So if you're still interested, maybe that's something our team can help you with.
Great. Let me just bring up the third poll and what our audience thinks. So the question was, what will convince you to invest in property? 54%, this is for all you guys in the industry, 54% say drop in prices. They're all waiting for it. We are all waiting for it. And 44% say lower interest rates on loans. And only 2%, Pavitra, you're right, only 2% think that complimentary offers will help.
Yeah, definitely telling the sales team to stop offering iPhones.
Right. A drop in prices will help.
Yeah.
Shall we say 5%, 10%? Right. So I had one last question. Given that we are all working from home now, and this is going to, this might end up being a long-term trend as well, because as companies start to accept work from home and learn from home kind of things, is the structure of the house itself changing? Are you planning new kinds of structures? Earlier I probably would have gone for a 2-bedroom thing, but now I want a 2+1/2 bedroom, 2 plus half room, which can be my study or office kind of thing. So are you seeing that kind of queries, that kind of demand in a changed world?
I think yes. The future has to be flexible. Mm-hmm. The future has to be dynamic. In the good olden days, the architects would be providing a space called puja room, sort of a thing, where you would have your temple or something like this. Mm. Similarly, now going forward, the developer fraternity as well as the architects, they have to provide this kind of environment which is flexible, which is multi-purpose, and at the same time, it caters to the requirement of this virtual world, this digital world, where even if we go back to our offices, we need to have a backup of ensuring that we work seamlessly. And then the kind of transformation which has taken place in every sphere of activities. Education is one such thing. Medicare is another such thing, kind of a thing. Even the media houses today, they are being able to operate so competently from their home, sort of a thing. The design aspect will undergo a huge change. And I think this is going to be one of the benefits which COVID-19 would have provided and will endure for a long, long time to come.
Right. Pavitra, are you already designing new kinds of homes?
Not necessarily. It's not a new thing for us. I think in the past we have seen that this kind of traction for the extra bedroom has been definitely something in certain markets that works very well. In a lot of in the Whitefield, Sarjapur Road area, a lot of those kind of families, because it's typically like a double income kind of household. You generally see this interest in 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom plus a den or a study or whatever you want to call it. So generally like a smaller room that is almost like a multi-purpose room. For some people, it could be a study. Eventually, when there are kids, maybe it becomes the nursery. So I think that goes to the same topic about flexibility. And I was just noticing that we had also seen an increase in the average area of our apartments being sold. It's generally, it's interesting. It's around 250 to 300 square feet, which is literally the size of another room, right? If you're adding a bedroom. So I think that's really what it is. Even if people thought, hey, we are in a 2-bedroom, 2-bathroom, yes, we have a kid, it's enough space for us. I think in this pandemic work from home area, there is just not enough, quiet spaces for multiple people to do work, kids to take their classes. If you have somebody else, staying with you like a parent or something, how does everybody still get their space? So I think this is not a new thing. It's not a new trend, but I think it will become more of a commonality in almost all of the product. It's not an innovation. I think it would just become more prevalent.
Right. Aditya?
I don't think so. I do think there's going to be a demand for bigger apartments, and my assumption is temporarily they will be using those bigger apartments for an office or whatever it might be. We as Embassy have substantial exposure in the commercial segment, and we are completely against the thought of work from home. It works for someone like me, or it works with, a CEO kind of level job. It's very difficult for the service sector, someone who makes that 3 to 6 lakhs a year, to be able to work from home. And I think, we're not going to see a big trend of that once the vaccine is here. And when you buy a home, you're thinking long term, you're thinking 10 years plus. I don't think you really want to focus so much on a trend that is quite short-lived. And I think once we are back to normal, we'll be very quick to come back to normal, if that makes sense. So once we have a vaccine, I think our lives will be extremely quick to come back to how we were before the vaccine. So yes, even with the offices, our tenants are saying there'll be behavioral changes, but not design changes. And I think that's going to reflect on residential. And, we're not going to be launching projects or designing projects based on a 1.5-year trend.
Mm-hmm. Right. I'll give the last word to Prashant. Prashant, on the very important issue of prices. What's your last word? What do you think will happen? Our audience has said, yeah, drop prices and give us lower interest rates. Which one should people expect?
Yeah, I think I think the situation demands to be reasonable for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
We look at the fact that from last 7 years there has been absolutely no price increase. If you account for inflation, I think there is a significant drop in the price.
Right.
One part. Now, if you look at what would be that right price which the buyers are looking at, I think a lot of people are still sitting at the fence.
Mm-hmm.
Once the talk about price discount is kind of there, people are kind of in a wait and watch mode.
Right.
There's no bottom anywhere. I think for a buyer, if you have to look in at totality, I think the affordability is all time high. There are a lot of enablers right now. You have some developers who are willing to sit across the table and kind of talk to you, and then prices are kind of in my opinion they have kind of not gone anywhere, and then the interest rate factor is kind of quite prevalent. So instead of just waiting for further price correction,
Mm-hmm.
you should go ahead and make the purchase if you're an end user, because there are certain things we also need to keep into account. That once we take into the account that economy starts to revive, and we have started to see that inflation would in the moment you pump in a lot of money in the economy to boost the economy, eventually the inflation would go up, and that's when slowly the interest rate would start to creep up.
Right.
Today or tomorrow, the developers will start to increase the price because you look at the construction cost, look at the way the labor costs have gone up, look at the way the compliance cost after RERA coming in has gone up. Somewhere the prices will start to move, and if we keep on waiting for this idle price, I think we might genuinely miss the bus. I think
right now is the time you're saying.
Yeah, again,
now is the time you're saying.
You're an end user. I think this is the best, one of the best time to buy a house.
Right. On that note, we will end the discussion. Thank you, Mr. Sharma. Thank you, Pavitra. Thank you, Aditya. Thank you, Prashant. Great discussion. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much.
Again.
So I was actually just curious. There were some Q&As